you?
I'm doing great. There we are. How you doing?
I'm great too. So how's it going in Miami? The lockdown?
My partial lockdowns. They've locked down like the restaurants and only for takeout and delivery. They just closed all like the non-essential businesses, nail salons, entertainment, stuff like that. But the grocery stores are fine. Gas stations are fine. The coffee shops are still open for takeout only. But it's okay. We're doing all right.
Yeah. You know what? We'll get through this, I think.
Absolutely.
I think what's the difference is when you notice people who've been on the news all day. If you've been watching news all day, you suddenly have a different attitude.
That's right. I stay away from the news. I focus on, or if I do read something of the news, I try to really understand it. Like they're trying to predict that the job losses are going to be significantly more than the Great Depression. And the reality is, well, back in the Great Depression, our population has increased like 3 times over since the Great Depression, or 2 times over. The amount of just overall jobs has increased significantly. And so people just read the headline and they don't take the time to really do their due diligence and understand what do those numbers or what are the metrics that they're saying really mean.
But that's a tough thing to do, if you haven't studied markets and if you haven't studied business and you're not working in business per se, it's kind of really hard to make sense of what they're saying about the economy.
Sure. Well, I think it's hard. I don't think anybody can really make sense of what's happening in the economy right now. And if they're acting like experts, then they're probably lying because we've never been in a pandemic, you know, uh, let alone we just have it, right? So I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen. They're all guesstimating, and I certainly have my own guesstimates, but
I'd
we're
love
all
to
just
hear
taking a
your guesstimates, actually. When I told, I have a few friends who are
sure.
property developers, and yeah, everyone's just keen to hear what someone like yourself, who's a real estate person. But before we get into all that, I was hoping you'd
Sure.
introduce yourself to our audiences.
Absolutely. Yeah, we kind of just jumped right into it. So
Right.
my name's Alex Vidal. I'm the president of a large real estate brokerage down here in Miami. We have 6 offices and close to 500 realtors. Personally, I've been in the business over 22 years, going on 23, since I'm 19 years old, and it's been a fun ride. A couple of good rides along the way, bumps and bruises, and it's been a lot of fun. But overall, 22 plus years in the business, run a nice big real estate brokerage now, and having a lot of fun.
What made you want to get into real estate? Did you always know?
No, not at all. It was totally by chance. What happens is I'm 41 and I had my
Mhm.
son at 19 years old. My
All
first son, I
right.
have four boys, and that's why I'm filming in the car versus in my house right now.
Yeah.
Um, and so I have a 22-year-old, I have a 13-year-old, and I have 10-year-old twins.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was 19. I needed a job because I just had my son, and I had the option of essentially finding 2 jobs. One was selling advertising for the Miami Herald, which is the big real estate public or newspaper publication down here,
Right.
which was a job my mom got me. And the other one was to go be the secretary to the owner of the largest real estate company in Florida, literally his secretary. And I took that job because it was a job I got on my own versus a job that my mom got me. Um,
Right.
and within 8 months' time of being there, I always heard him complaining that they were hiring 70 or 80 agents a month, but they were losing 70 or 80 agents a month. And I just asked him, "Hey, do you mind if I start helping you on the side? What do you got to lose?" And that really launched my career. I ended up, taking over the entire recruiting division for realtors for that brokerage, and I've done that not only here in Florida for 2 big companies. I've also done it in California and Colorado as well.
Wow, you're so definitely an expert, and you've seen, downturns. You've seen, you've been around it enough. So, what do you make of? What do you think is going to happen with global real estate? Because here in London, people are so outpriced. Even people who earn 6 figures find it really difficult to get on the property ladder. and then those who are well off to are outpriced because, you know, we have tycoons from all over the world who
Sure.
kind of inflated their prices.
Got it.
What can you shed some light?
Well, sure. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to talk about the global real estate market only because you know it's hard enough to talk about even Miami in general because
Right.
I can talk about Miami overall, but there are so many different pockets and so many different property types, whether it be single family homes or whether it be condos or rentals or commercial real estate or the new developments, which I know you want to touch upon. I will
Mm-hmm.
tell you this. I think the major thing holding people back really is education and knowing the different opportunities that are out there. I know that interest rates have been lowered across the world to help spur in the
Yes.
economy. And so
Yeah.
I think you're going to find people that were priced out all of a sudden find themselves back into being in the market again because they're going to be able to afford more property as a result of the lower interest rates. And that's really probably the best way I can look at it. I think if you really do your due diligence, there are some amazing loan programs, really low interest, free money that you
Right.
can find yourself getting into some really good deals right now.
Right. Presumably, you need excellent credit to get that free money, right?
Yeah, you do. I mean, I don't know if it has to be excellent. But it definitely has to be good. It can't be bad. And again, I don't know. You know, that's a great question. I don't know how interest or how credit is rated differently in let's say other parts of the world than it is in the U.S. In the U.S., you have three different credit bureau agencies, and they essentially take your middle score of the three, and that's what you're ranked upon. But if you have a decent score, you're going to be taken advantage. We're seeing right now a huge spike in people refinancing their properties only because interest rates are so low that they were in the fours or the fives. Now they're getting rates into the twos. It's crazy.
Oh, wow. You're
Yeah.
actually, I think you're giving people a lot more hope. That maybe if the interest rates remain this low, or do you think they'll spike up so much once we, you know, are going again?
Um, I was supposed to have a call with my mortgage broker this morning because he did tell me they spiked up a little bit, but then they go back down and then they spike up again. Kind of what's happening here in the States, at least, is the loans are put out at an interest rate. The money that's available, the available pool of money has been absorbed so quickly because of the amount of people that are refinancing that the banks are running out of money to lend. And then the government is coming in and buying those mortgages off the banks and then freeing up the bank's monies again to go out and loan. And that's why you're kind of seeing the spikes up and down. But yeah, I think if anybody's interested in refinancing now, at least in this country, now's the time to be speaking to your mortgage broker. No doubt.
And what about people who feel a bit trapped? So they're trying to sell, but now, would you say this is a good time to sell?
I think it's a fabulous time to sell. So a couple of things are happening, right? Because of those interest rates, even with the pandemic, okay? Because of those interest rates, you had the original buyers that were already out there looking to buy, even more motivated to pull the trigger because the interest rates are low. Then you had the buyers who were on the fence, who were thinking of buying, who now all of a sudden are going to jump into that buyer pool to play because money's so cheap. And so what happens is you have the original buyers already looking that are pulling the trigger, and then you have the buyers who are on the fence now joining the party. And so if you're a seller, there's no better time to sell because the buyer pool is bigger. Um, and when you sell, that's what you want. You want low interest rates because people will be able to afford your property, and you want more buyers. So right now it's a perfect time to sell, in my opinion.
Yeah. And buying then. So you're a first time buyer. You said, look, low interest rates. If you have okay credit, it's definitely the time to start looking.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. You should absolutely buy. I think there's a lot of rhetoric out there on social media from the gurus that
Yes.
talk about don't own where you live, rent where you live, and own investment properties. And that could work for a lot of people, but for me, I'm 41, I'm married, I have four boys. One's already on his own, but I got three small ones that we love having that stability of owning our property, and we get a lot of tax benefits from owning property, whether it's an investment or your primary. So for us, there's just no value. Some things exceed the value of money, and us having the stability of owning our own home. A landlord can't come in and kick us out. A landlord can't come in and raise our rents. Like this is our life right now, and for us, that stability pays off in way bigger ways than just money.
And what do you make of the fears that if we go into a global recession, that would that change things?
Well, I will tell you that Warren Buffett has a great saying that says, be greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy. And I will tell you the amount of people I know who became multi millionaires in the last recession, the end of '07, '08 through, let's say 2011, 2012. And so there are some amazing buys, people that went in and bought properties during the recession, um, and for so cheap. And the biggest difference between, let's say, what we're going through now and what happened in 2000, let's say 7 through 11, was there was no money being lent in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Like the banks didn't lend money. There were no loans available. So if you were only a cash buyer, would you be able to afford, would you be able to buy properties during the last recession? This is not right now. This is not a banking global crisis. Actually, all the governments, from what I've seen, are stepping up to help the banks, not to bail them out, but to give them more money to continue lending to keep the economy going. So even if we are in a recession, I don't think you're going to see the lack of loans being afforded to potential purchasers. So I don't see why you would not buy. If the money's still there and being able to be lent, then why not pull the trigger? You may even get a better deal. Plus, we have limited in Florida down here, in Miami. We have limited supply. We have limited inventory because, I'll give you an idea, Florida is the second fastest growing state in the entire U.S. And as a result, all these people, 45%. So I think the exact number is 1,002 people a day move to Florida, and about 40% of that is South Florida, Dade, Broward, so Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. So when you have, one of the largest growing areas in the entire country, for us at least, we benefit from that migration with low inventory, low interest rates. It's a good recipe.
But what about, do you think, like, you look at LA and California, there's a lot said about homelessness and how that's kind of killed property. What would you say? Is that happening a lot in Miami?
No, I don't. We don't see a lot of. And you're right. I have been for my own show, and I do a podcast as well. I've actually gone to LA 6 times. I was supposed to go last week. I'm sorry, this week. I was supposed to be there 2 days ago, and I had to cancel my whole trip. Yeah, and you're right. There's a significant amount of homelessness in LA. We don't see anywhere near that amount in Miami. But I don't think that affects, the homelessness is homelessness. I mean, I don't really think that affects property values in any way. At least not, it's not doing that here. You never hear of somebody say, "Oh, there's a lot of homeless people in this area. I don't want to buy in that particular neighborhood or city." To the contrary, there's a lot of areas in Miami that are going through that gentrification period. And those neighborhoods are the hottest ones right now, actually.
Right. And so again, another thing I think that might change things is your politics, right? So a lot of millennials, we've noticed, a lot of millennials are feeling that there's been almost a fix up, and they feel like there's no way they'll ever own their own properties. Do you feel they're justified because you were once 19 and you were, had the same
Sure.
ambitions? What would you say to a millennial or a centennial?
I would tell them they're crazy. I bought my first property when I was 21 years old, and I've owned multiple properties throughout my life. Millennials actually represent one of the larger buying pools here in South Florida. And I would tell you that the biggest thing holding millennials back typically is they don't think they have enough money to buy the property, to put a down payment. And it really, through the proper education and knowing, hey, listen, here's what happens. You can buy a property with X number of dollars down. And then in addition to that, here are all the additional benefits you have of when you buy a property. You can write off the mortgage interest on your taxes. You can write off the property taxes. You can write off depreciation if it's an investment property. So you have all these different tax benefits that really play in. So I think it's just more of a lack of education. and the misnomer that millennials like to move a lot, and millennials don't like, they don't want to own anything. They want to rent everything in their life. I think if you look at the source of who that's coming from, typically it's somebody who's in the rental business. So you'll look at, let's say, Grant Cardone, and I like Grant. He's actually been on my show. And Grant will say, millennials aren't buying property. They don't want to own anything. They want to lease everything, essentially. Well, he also happens to own I don't know how many thousands of units. So it's in his best interest for that to happen. It's also my best interest for people to buy property. But I make money if they rent property too. So I don't care what they do, if they buy or they rent. Millennials are buying, they're getting educated not only on the amount of money it takes to buy a property, but they're getting educated on the tax benefits that come along with it. And whether they're buying their main property to live in or they're buying investment property, they're buying property.
And how can they start to get educated? Because it seems really complex. There's so much to know. If you're just a first-time buyer, how can you start to really get educated about getting on the property ladder?
All right. So the first thing is get pre-approved, right? I think the first thing anybody can do is you speak with a mortgage broker. Ask people that if they recommend a mortgage broker that they trust, because you can then sit down with somebody and really understand the financial process. Okay, if I buy a duplex, how much do I need to buy a duplex? If I buy a triplex, if I buy a fourplex. In the United States, anything, you can get a residential loan, which has significantly better interest rates on anything that is 4 units and below. Essentially, a single family home is considered the same as a 4-unit property. And then above that, then it turns into commercial loans. Get educated. Speak to the people that are actually the ones that are going to provide you with the loans, the mortgage brokers, to find out. Once you have that number, then you get with a realtor that you can trust that can then educate you about what are the options that are out there. And so, and then also, so surround yourself with the right people, the right mortgage broker, the right realtor, and jump online, man. There's so much information out there, and you're right. It can be overwhelming, it can be confusing, but between what you're learning online through YouTube or whatever, and then in addition to that, speaking to the people that are actually in the business doing this day in and day out, and if they're people that you can trust, there's no reason why you can't be on that ladder.
And are you trying to do that with your podcast? I think it's called the Closer Club, right?
Correct. No, the Closer Club has more to do with this. What happened was, in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, there are close to 60,000 licensed realtors. Okay. And 500 of them work for me. If you look at this, the customer for my realtor is the buyer and the seller. My client are the realtors. And I looked at it and said, how can I, as the president of my company, get in front of at least the 60,000 realtors, or some of them, most of them. And you have to look at the sandbox that they play in. And the sandbox that they play in is social media. All right, cool. What's the toy they play with the most? Well, it's video. So I started a show where I interview some of the top developers and real estate brokers, so that people that don't work for me, even if everything was the same, commission splits, managerial support, marketing support, office locations, brand names, if all of that was the same, wouldn't you want to work for somebody who happens to be connected to some of the bigger people in the country, right? And I launched a show, and about 3-4 months into it, I wanted to speak at a convention that had about 5,000 attendees. And the people told me, listen, we love you, but the PR agency said, we love you, we know your company, but the company that puts on the event doesn't know you and doesn't know your brokerage. And that's what I said, thanks very much. I hung up the phone and I started going national with the show. I said, screw it, I don't need them. I'll create my own platform. And really, mine is more for particularly my audience, which is realtors, but it really applies to anybody. Like, I have a yacht broker who's a huge fan of the show, because sales is sales. It just happens to be that we're selling a home versus selling a car, or selling a yacht, or selling insurance, or selling whatever it is, right? So mine is more for people to really learn motivation, mindset, business lessons, sales techniques. Even I've had nutritionists on to talk about nutrition, just on how to become an overall better individual, both personally and professionally.
Right. What is it you love about what you do the most?
Well, for the show or for the brokerage?
For the brokerage.
I love, it's funny, I'm loving what we're going through right now. The motivation, the empowering others, the ability to show somebody that they think they're here, but by helping them, we can get them here. That to me by far is the most gratifying. It's really the ability to lead people, particularly through what we're going through right now. Right before we jumped on this call, my number one agent called me and she's like, I think you're pushing the people too hard. You know, we just had 3 closings that we're trying to figure out where we're going to close. And I had 5 deals fall. And I said to her, my reply to her exactly back was, reread your text message and then tell me why you think I'm pushing so hard. Right. You know, if you had 5 deals right now, you have to double down. And right now it's like kind of getting the people, even the best ones, getting them through what we're going through right now, because there are people that when we get out of this, whenever that may be, the comeback is going to be monstrous. And so you have to put in the work now. And so what I love about it is getting people to continue pushing, even though they just want to stay in bed and wait to, and wake up tomorrow and hope they don't hear about coronavirus anymore.
So how do you stay then motivated? How do you energize yourself?
Great question. Great question. So a couple things. One is I do something every day. I do a couple things. One is I have my manifestation list, and my manifestation list is essentially being grateful for things that have not happened in my life as if they've already happened. So let me share. There's a great book about it called The Secret. They talk about it. But a perfect example is I'm so happy and grateful I drive a Porsche 911. Now, I don't drive a Porsche 911. I drive a Ford Raptor, which is essentially a Porsche and a pickup truck body. This thing's a beast for people that know pickup trucks, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't drive a Porsche. I want to though, and I'm grateful as if that's already happened. And I do that. I have 25 manifestations. I have 11 personal. I have 8 personal, professional, which have to do with my real estate portfolio and have to do with my show. And then I have 6 that deal with the brokerage directly. And I repeat those to myself 3 times a day. When I wake up, at lunch, and when I go to bed. The other thing I do is every single night, I write down minimum 3 to 5 things for which I'm grateful for. I'm in my car. It's if not, I'd show you. It's on my nightstand. And I literally, pen and a paper, write down what I'm grateful for, 3 to 5 things. The key is this. On bad days, I write down minimum 25 things I'm grateful for. On the bad days. Why? To remind me that even on bad days, you have a lot to be grateful for. And then what I also do is I send a positive note to somebody every day, a text message. Hey, you know, you're a restaurant. What can I do to help you? I love you guys. I'm grateful for what you do for us as a community. How can I help? Or, hey, thank you for having done my show. I'm grateful I learned this from it, and that will stay with me for the rest of my life. And those positive messages have played a huge role as well. And plus for me, like I've already been to hell and back a couple times, you know, like meaning I've lost it all. I bounce back. I lost it all again. I bounce back. So for me, I already know that God forbid, I lose everything. It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to be okay. Cause I've already lost it twice. So whatever, it's going to suck, but I've already been there. So I'm not worried about that.
So I hadn't realized actually just how much, almost how much effort that it almost seems like you have to work at this, right? Nobody just wakes up positive, you know?
You nailed it on the head. And I actually share this with my agents all the time. I did a message yesterday. I'm doing that daily video to my company. And one of them yesterday was the power of gratitude. And I get asked that a lot. Alex, you're high energy. Like this is me normally. You're always positive 99% of the time. How? And the reality is it's like, if I turn this camera around, I don't know if I can do this. Let me see if I can do this. I want to show you. I don't know if you can zoom in, but that's my garage right now. I have a full gym in my garage. Okay. I don't know if you can see it or not. So I have a full
gym. So your gym is inside your garage?
I have a full CrossFit gym in my garage. And, you know, for me, it's working out. Okay. I work out every day, whether I want to or not, with the exception of 1 day a week. I got to rest. And, you know, for me, the mindset is the same thing. You have to work on it every day. Some days are easier than other. Some days I don't want to read my manifestation. Some days I don't want to sit down and write down the things for which I'm grateful for. But I do it anyways, because those are the moments that you need it most. And that's when most people end up actually walking away from it. I coach a few of our agents, and I tell them, you know, are you doing your gratitude exercise? Oh, I've been bummed the last couple of days, so I haven't done it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's when you actually had to do it, you know? It's a workout. Absolutely. You have to work out in your brain.
Right. So obviously it sounds like there's the physical aspect. You work out physically in your gym, and then
Yep.
mentally you work out.
Absolutely.
Spiritually, you practice gratitude.
Correct.
And so you kind of know that you have to be integrated every day, no breaks from that.
Not mentally. The physical breaks you need, because if not, your body would break down, at least the way I train between
Yeah.
CrossFit and triathlons. But mentally, even it's funny, I joke, even when I get home at 3 a.m. from having gone out with my wife and my friends and we were drinking and I'm like, oh, you know, and I'm a little drunk, whatever, I still write down the things for which I'm grateful for. I can't read it the next day because I even do it on those days. That's how important, that's how ingrained it has to be into your daily activities.
And when did you start doing that?
So I've done it on and off for a couple of years. I've been doing it now since December. This is the most consistent that I've been by far.
And
Every
what
single
made
day
you
for
decide
two and a
to
half
be
months.
consistent about this?
I saw the results.
Right.
I saw the results. I saw what the power of manifestation does. I saw what being grateful does. I saw what happens when you send those positive notes to people. And I just saw my overall mood. Like right now, my brother, my cousins, who are all very wealthy, are all like kind of freaking out. And me, who I'm the poorest of the group by far, right? Because they're all very, very wealthy. I'm the voice of reason to them right now. It's pretty crazy.
Right.
Um,
Why do
and
you think that is? Is it because they haven't established the same rituals, or is it because they just feel like, okay, we've got more to lose? Because sometimes when you've got so much wealth and, you know, you're watching this and it's like, who wouldn't freak out? A billion wiped out.
correct. So you're right. And they're not billionaires, but they're definitely wealthy. But I would tell you that for them, I would say the biggest difference is I don't necessarily think, with the exception of one of them, I don't think they've been to that threshold of having lost it all, to where, like, I remember in 2000 and, man, I'm gonna say it was 2003. I remember I went and I bought a bunch of dress shirts for work, and I logged into my Bank of America bank account, and it was actually red, and I had to go back and return all my shirts
Yeah.
so that I actually had
2003,
money.
how old were you?
I was 24, around there, 24, 25.
Yeah.
And
And
then
that
in
stayed with you.
2000, oh yeah. And then it did, but I didn't learn. And then in 2013, after the market crash and all that, and I was very stupid. I still didn't learn. I spent all my money. I lost it all again. And then in the second half of that year, when my back was up against the wall, meaning my wife and I were separated, I had no job, I went out and I sold over, $7 million worth of real estate from July 17th, 2013 to December 31st, and made over 200 grand. And then from there, I did learn for sure, and I never looked back. And that's why I'm not so worried about it. And also, what I try to tell people too, when you're really good at what you do, let's assume my company shuts down, and because of this, my company shuts down, and all of a sudden I'm no longer the president of the company. I know, and I'm going to be a little cocky here. I know that my skill set is not very replicated in the industry in the entire country. And even if nobody is hiring, I will tell you that people will definitely look to upgrade their existing workforce. And so if all of a sudden I became a free agent, let's say,
Yeah.
somebody may look at me and say, yeah, I got somebody in that place now, but they're not as good as this guy. I'm going to hire him. Right.
Right.
And I have that self-belief. And so improving your skill set and putting in the time and letting people know that you're great at what you do is important, because you may need it. You never know, you know?
Because it's almost, you sound like your confidence came from really going through the grind, as opposed to, not
Okay.
really. Yeah.
It came through almost 23 years in the business, you know?
Right.
So,
And then in terms of your career,
yeah.
you have your podcast, you're the president of your company. What are things that you feel like, oh, this is on my bucket list. I want to do this.
I want my show to be the number one podcast in the world. It's one of my manifestations. I'm so happy and grateful that my podcast is the number one podcast in the world with millions of views and downloads and generates massive income. So that's one, and that's one of my 25 manifestations. You can tell just by how I reeled that off. And the other one is I want to take my company national. Right now we're in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, and there's no reason why our company can't be a national player.
Right. And where would be the next city or state you want to be in?
Well, my parent companies actually own other real estate companies in Boston, New York, and Chicago. So for me, my direct company, I want to take it throughout Florida, Orlando, Tampa, the West Coast, West Palm Beach, etc. But I want to make it so big that my parent company looks at it and says, why do we have 3 different real estate companies? Let's merge them together. They're doing such a great job in Florida, and then let me run the entire national operation.
Wow. That sounds like a lot of work.
Well, it depends on how you look at it, right? If you look at it as work, yeah, absolutely, it could be. For me, it's a passion, it's a goal. I love what I do. So for me, it's not, and that's a great point, by the way. If it's work, then you have a problem.
Right.
For me, it's not work. It's like a driven thing,
Yeah.
I want to test my capacity, and I want to see how far we can go.
How do you organize your day? So talk me through a typical day in Alex Vidal's life.
Sure. So a couple things before we get into what a typical day looks like, because I don't think there's really a typical day as well. Actually, that's a lie. I'll get into it. So a couple things. There's a great story about golf balls, pebbles, and sand. And if the listeners or the viewers can go just Google golf ball story from a teacher. And he takes out a jar, and the jar he gets in front of his class, takes out a jar and fills it with golf balls. He then asks his class, is the jar full? And they all say yes. Okay. He then takes out pebbles, puts the pebbles in the jar, and all of a sudden the pebbles fill in all the space in between the golf balls. He then asks the class, is it full? They say yes. He then takes out sand. Okay. Fills the jar with sand. The sand fills in all the space in between the pebbles and the golf balls. He then asks the class, is it full? They say yes. He then takes out 2 beers, pours 2 beers into the jar. Okay. Now they start laughing and they say, what's going on? The golf balls are the big things in your life, your family, your health, your kids, your job. The pebbles and the sand are everything else. Getting the house clean, grocery shopping, cleaning your clothes, the errands. And so for me, I applied that, and I recently made this change. I apply that to my life to where if it doesn't affect one of my golf balls, I pass it on to somebody else. Okay. And what I also did was I used to travel between all of my offices, which would kill about 3 to 4 hours a day in my car. So what I did was I remodeled my entire corporate office, like my physical office, which I would typically be shooting from these podcasts, and I'd show you, but again, I'm in my car.
Well, hopefully we'll shoot the next one from there.
For sure. I changed my environment to be an environment that I wanted to be in, and I really started valuing myself more. And I kind of got this from the show. I'm like, man, I've gone to LA 6 times, New York 5 times, Aspen, Las Vegas, Dallas, Raleigh for the show. They're not coming to me. I'm going to them. And I said, you know what? Because I value their time. I said, if somebody values meeting me and values my time, they'll come to me. And right. So my typical day is then I wake up, get a workout, get my kids to the bus stop, work out, get ready for work, drop my other kid off at school, and then I go into my office. And then from there, it's really focused on either meeting with my staff, doing coaching sessions for our agents, or recruiting agents. And that's the bulk of my day. And then I come home around 7. And if I can go get a swim in for triathlon, because I do triathlon training as well, while the kids are at soccer practice, I'll go swim and then go get them from practice.
Wow. And what time do you retire to bed and kind of do your spiritual stuff of writing down your day?
10:30, 11, and I'm up at 7.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a reasonable amount of time. You seem to get enough rest and
I try not to spend a lot of time on social media. you know.
Yeah.
Uh, anyways,
Well, it's been really nice talking to you.
yes, absolutely.
I think we've managed to get quite a lot in. I'll edit it and try and see if I can transcribe some of it for the website. I'm glad we stayed open because initially I only had like mortgage related stuff, but I actually feel that I got so much of the positivity and motivation, which
Cool.
I typically love about listening to someone's podcast. I think I only clicked on a few, but it was all real estate. So I maybe should listen to it a bit longer.
Sure. To me, my number one is, if you go back, it was the first one of the year, is with a guy named Bedros Keuilian. Um,
Bedros Keuilian.
yeah,
Okay.
he's got the tattoos and all that stuff. That guy changed my life. He was awesome. He was
Oh,
phenomenal.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Well, I'll definitely stay in touch because one of the things
Yeah.
I'm going to do towards the end of the year is do like a highlight reel. What I do on my Instagram is pick out quotes and keep resharing, especially at this time when I feel like people really need motivation. Thank you so
Sure.
much for giving me as much as you have and
Oh,
being.
you're welcome. Thank you for having me on. And if I'm not sure if you follow me on Instagram, but if you don't do, and then I'll follow you back. And if you post anything there, I'll share it and all that stuff. Okay.
Thank you. And yeah, please, I'm also kind of new and, slowly building up my team. So any advice that you can give us, let me know
Don't
and we'll
stop.
stay in touch.
Don't stop. Be consistent. That's the number one. The number one thing I get is, like, I don't do it 1 week and then wait 2 or 3 weeks and then do it again. Every single week, I drop an episode, 97 episodes in a row. Don't stop.
Okay. Don't stop. Then is that with everything, would you say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My wife calls me Mr. Persistence.
Yeah. If you have any pictures of the family or other stuff that you want me to edit in, please send them to me.
Okay.
And I'm just thinking, yeah, I think that's about it. If you have any ideas, any more stuff that you want to say in the future about London, or if you expand or you have more to say, let me know and I'll figure out a way to work you back into the show.
No worries. Thank you, Safiya. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex. I'll follow
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.